All right, we are back, and if anyone is having trouble seeing Scotty's video, please message us over in the chat here because we seem to be having a couple technical difficulties with hopping right now. But so Scotty Shaw is involved in a lot of just education and hackathons and working with underprivileged students, and he's a graduate. Okay, they said they see you fine, cool. And so he is a graduate of Duke. Graduate of Duke. Also looks like you did some study at Harvard. And me and him both, from what I've gathered, I mean, definitely me. I come from a poor family and kind of worked my way up from the dirt. I'm the first generation college degree holder, and definitely the first person in my family to go to a top school. And it sounds like Scotty has a similar story to tell. And so I will turn it over to you, Scotty, and let you tell him about yourself.
All right, thanks a lot, Leroy. Yeah, so like he was saying, didn't exactly grow up with a whole lot, small towns, first generation, definitely a lot of just figuring stuff out on the fly. And I think as a result, I definitely learned how to become flexible, really creative. And I think those are two of the main things that have allowed me to take my pre-pandemic experiences and apply it to the digitalization that's happened during the pandemic. And, I think that's the main thing to talk about. A lot of you are here, you're here to hear about remote working, remote learning. A lot of people are used to being able to meet up in person, just like me. Of course, how do you transition? I think obviously you need to have some flexibility, some creativity. And, on top of that, you got to have some experience. That experience you can gain on your own pretty quickly. You just have to work at it. We've heard the 10,000 hours concept. So, the story of me working on hackathons starts in 2013. I was at Duke, and this was the first wave of hackathons. We created Hack Duke. We invited several hundred people. The next year we had 1,000. We learned very early on, how do you differentiate? We decided, we're going to focus on social good. So if you visit hackduke.org, you can still see, Hack Duke, code for good. A lot of the focus was on applying your skills to help other people. The tracks we had at the time were health, environment, education, and empowerment. I think they added nonprofits somewhat recently. And one of the big things was not just creating the event, not just differentiating it, but also training the team, growing the team, training them, and then saying, how do we pass this on so you guys can operate without us? So I did all that. I was then in San Francisco. I did iOS for some time. I taught iOS as well. And a lot of that came from when I would read about nomadic tribes in places like Kenya, the Maasai, or even modern nomads in Mongolia. They were always finding ways to really make use of mobile technology. And one of the main things is, with cell phones, rather than what we use here, Venmo or PayPal, for example, they have a system where they can text each other if it's certain formatted text saying this person, account number, something is sending this money to, someone else with that account number. The corresponding banks would actually be alerted and they would make that happen. So it's their own way of, Venmo and PayPal. And it's stuff like that got me thinking, all right, what can we do with mobile technology? And I realize now it wasn't so much cell phones specifically. What caught my attention was the lack of geography that this technology had. They were able to operate from anywhere, just move around. And, we're now aware with remote working, remote learning, it's kind of like work from home, stuff like that. You might be at home right now. You might be on a beach in Hawaii. You might be, in an igloo in somewhere in northern Canada, northern Alaska, something like that. As long as you're able to connect, you're able to see what I'm saying. But even if you're not able to connect, you're not completely cut off. You just have to modify what you do. Maybe when you're in town, you get Wi-Fi. You download videos, and then you have this stuff with you when you go back out. Obviously, it's not quite the same, but that is a lot of creativity and flexibility. So the main thing for me is, after working in San Francisco for some time, made a decent amount of money, had a lot of fun, started thinking, I want to get back to doing something more people-oriented. I want to try to do something for others. I want to pave roads for people, because come from small towns, I still remember before graduating from high school, before finding out that I was going to have enough scholarship to go to a school like Duke, joining the military was actually a really possibility for me. A lot of people for us come from small towns. We don't have many ways out. And, for better, for worse, we do look at the military as a possibility. Stuff like GI Bill, again, free education, depending on your field, maybe you do learn some skills that you can apply to the real world. So, looking at the stuff that I got to do in college, the stuff that I saw in San Francisco, and then looking at what the people I went to high school with, looking at what they had, what I had, I felt that someone had to come back and really transform the digital desert of the South Central United States. I was born in Oklahoma, grew up in Arkansas, and went to high school in Texas. So I was really strongly aware a lot of those opportunities were still missing. By my estimation at the time, Texas was maybe still 10 years behind in terms of the environment, the ecosystem for tech. Because I was saying at the time, if I'm in San Francisco, a city of, I think, 850,000 people, I could probably within 1 week just walk up and down the street, ask everyone I see, can you create a startup right now? And I would be able to find probably 100,000 people in that one city who would say yes. I'm not asking if they're going to succeed, IPO. I'm just saying, can you create a startup right now? They're going to have an idea. They're going to have some idea of how to execute it. They're going to understand the process. They can do it. That's a yes. And I was thinking about how, the South Central United States, right? We have a large population in this part of the US, and I wasn't even sure I would find 10,000 people, because even if you know this stuff, you might not feel like you have the, you might not have the confidence and feel like you can do it. And that is a key difference. So I felt I had to come back and transform that. So I started by going to all the major colleges, all the major schools, and said, basically there just were almost no hackathons at the time. UT and Rice, the other ones that did exist had died off. So I came back to revive them and launch new ones. For the most part, it was a lot of driving up to the colleges, universities, just knocking on doors, cold emails saying, hey, professor who and who, your school doesn't have this. This is what the top schools around the nation have been doing, and this is what I can do for you. And from there, get in touch with their comp sci club students, just whoever. And I would start by creating their hackathon. And then I would start telling the students, hey, let's start recruiting people. I'll train you and pass things off to you. And so for me, it's never been about creating a hackathon specifically. It's about bringing the skills and the mindset that you find all over the place in places like San Francisco, New York, LA, even places like North Carolina. You don't think that's a state that's very innovative, but when you're on campus at Duke, UNC, NC State, you start to realize there are these pockets, but we didn't really have the same thing here. So, going there, what's the skill set and mindset? Bring that back here, transmitted through a hackathon, because it doesn't have to be a hackathon. I just felt that was the best way to go about it. And the 2019-2020 school year, that's when I passed everything off. It was like, all right, I've trained everyone. Now it's time to see if you can do it on your own. We all know, coming from tech, that you're not supposed to create a system that you're always part of. You're supposed to create a system that can work without you. And that was the whole point. Every event was able to happen at least once without me. And even with the pandemic, a lot of that switched online. And to me, that's the most important thing, because that means what I taught them when I created the organizational skills, the structure, they were able to carry that forward. And, the schools, there's, OU, UNT, UTA, SMU, Baylor, A&M, Texas Southern, University of Houston, UTSA. There's just a lot of different schools. And, I've also done several high schools as well. The main thing, like I said, isn't necessarily creating a hackathon. It's transmitting the skills needed to become a software engineer and or a product manager. And hackathons were a great way to say, all right, let's get companies together, let's get sponsors, let's get people together. We're going to create an environment that really encourages you to continue building and learning from each other. So the main thing is, that was my experience before the pandemic. I had built up several years of that experience, not just the skill set, but also the mindset, because I was in San Francisco. I saw on the ground what's going on there, stuff that people still would not understand unless they've witnessed it and have been a part of it in San Francisco. In most parts of the US, we think every hackathon is a massive, massive undertaking and a big deal. The truth is, in San Francisco, they happen all the time. They're not too hard to put together. The difference is, do you have the confidence? Do you have the skill set and the mindset? That comes from familiarity. And if you're in San Francisco, they're all over the place. If you're not in San Francisco, if you're not in New York, LA, then yeah, that's where it's tougher. A lot of it is, you got to learn how to do that stuff. And it's not like it's super easy either, because if I told you right now, organize a birthday party for 500 people, that's a challenge. How do you get 500 people? But the main thing is the concepts are the same. So from there, once you have those skills, you're going to be able to get hired somewhere. Now, the main thing is, of course, we're talking about remote learning or remote working. So I'm telling you about all this on-site stuff. What does that matter? It's not the on-site stuff that matters directly. Like I said, it's not the hackathons that matter directly. It's the experience, and then combined with the creativity and flexibility that I've always had to have growing up. When the pandemic struck, I still remember March 12th was the day that everything started to shut down. And I say that because although some things started to shut down March 11th, the NBA canceled a couple games that night. March 12th is when we woke up, and people had already woken up. They had the previous night to say, do we continue doing this or not? Basketball tournaments canceled. The ACC tournament canceled. The NCAA tournament, March Madness, that came to a halt. A lot of sports, if they played the game on March 11th, on March 12th, they didn't play anymore. They were canceled. They were postponed. Whatever it was, everyone was kind of in waiting to see what would happen. And then the national emergency declaration was March 13th. So I remember those 3 dates very specifically. March 12th, the day before the declaration, I knew that something had to change, just for the world, for myself, everything. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. So if you're able to see my screen, you can see this is a very simple website for my nonprofit. We just recently had an event. Here you can see all these articles about me, stuff that I've done, all these different schools that published articles. And like I said, you look through them, they will tell you that I created those events, and then I trained the students and passed them on. And you're going to see who did, who carried it forward about me, because the students are listing the articles as well. So for me, being able to do this stuff and teach it was really important, because then when the pandemic hit, I was able to very quickly launch Hack COVID. And on March 12th, I launched the first Hack COVID. I did it every weekend. And then from there, I was invited by the European Commission to serve as their CTO. And that was something that came out of nowhere for me. Coming from a different continent, being invited by them to say, all right, hey, we want you to serve as a CTO. This is being led by a European Commission officer, but we want you to lead this. You have the most experience, whatever it is, you have what we're looking for. So I'm still really proud that this flag is on that website because of my involvement. I think it's just one of those things. It's not just saying that I've worked hard and I've earned the right to have our flag there, but it's also to say that regardless of what we think the government was doing or not doing, the fact is we as individuals have been blessed to be in a country that does provide opportunities for us to grow into who we are, who we want to be, and from there to be able to say, what can we do for others? And I'm not saying it's perfect, but I do come from the American education system, as flawed as it is. It means a lot to me to be able to say, all right, here's something being created in a different continent, but they're still turning to us. They're still turning to me saying, hey, we do want your involvement. And we had over 30,000 people. The European Commission looked this up and said that this was the largest hackathon ever. It set a world record. And, if you think of it this way, hitting the top of your field, that's a big deal. For me to be able to say I was a CTO for an event that had 30,000 people for a hackathon, I think that was a really big deal to me to be able to say, yes, I've hit the top of my field. And this was all online. So, of course, the question is, where did my experience come into play? A lot of it was being able to say, I know how hackathons work inside out. I've seen many types. I launched 25 hackathons in this part of the US, but I've been involved with over 50 easily. Hack Duke, we had 1,000 people our second time. I helped a lot of other schools in California, small ones, large ones, really just innovate and create their own hackathons. So to really quickly create a large event online, I was able to say, what do we need to create online, the experience, and get people hyped up for this? I think one of the most important things is really, you got to have that experience. You got to put in that practice. We talk a lot about how, pro athletes, how good are they? We see what they do on the court, but we don't understand how hard they work in the gym, in dieting, making sure that they're at peak physical shape every single day. And I think, that's a great analogy. If you ever want to know how hard it is to become good at something, just think about 10,000 hours. Not everyone needs 10,000 hours, but it's not an easy concept, and it's even harder in practice. But that experience I built up 7 years before the pandemic meant I was able to quickly jump into this different time zone across the ocean and still be able to contribute in a very meaningful way. After that, I felt I wanted to give back to our country. I wanted to help out in some way. So I got involved with Vets in Tech and helped them create this event, Rally to Us, to really support veterans. And one of the really key things to me is, like I said, I had actually considered joining the military. It was a serious consideration, and that found out I was going to have enough money to go to Duke. So it was a big deal for me to be able to say, all right, this is something for people who did make that choice. It's a difficult choice to make because we all know the sacrifices they have to make. And I think it's a really big deal to me to be able to say, all right, here's some way to give back. When you're ready to transition into your second career, we want to provide ways for you to do that. We want to help you get to that point. Just because you're not from a wealthy background, a privileged background, doesn't mean that you can't join the same field. It's a different path, but we want to pave these roads and make sure that you also get that same, opportunity at some point. And then I just wrapped this up a couple of months ago, or a couple weeks ago. The Civic Code mentoring high school students on how to create their own hackathons. And so there's FHS hacks and color hacks. This is for me to be able to say, all right, we're going to create something, not, like I said, it's not about hackathons, but we're going to create something by saying, here's a hackathon by underprivileged students, underrepresented students, for underprivileged and underrepresented students. And Elias Wambugu, really talented programmer, really driven. He's a high school senior, and he's constantly trying to build new projects. So he's putting in his hours. He's doing a lot to try to better himself every day. He's not trying to have a hero day. He's just trying to say, I don't have a single zero day. So every day he does at least one thing. And for him, the transition between going to school in person and then going to school virtually, I explained to him, what are you missing in that experience? Think about what you enjoyed at the hackathons in person. That's a lot of the stuff that we want to put online for your event. For Dooney, color hacks, same thing. What did you miss, or what are you missing out on? How do we recreate that online? I think one of the main things is helping him understand, for example, getting involved with the Obama Youth Job Corps, getting their support, helping him understand that a lot of the connections that seem harder to make are still there. And in fact, a lot of what you can do is extended by being online. So consider this, you're all on this online hackathon. A lot of you are not in Texas. A lot of you might not even be in the US, but you're able to join this event. So clearly you can see that there are things from before the pandemic, like the concept of a hackathon. They're coming into this space. They're going digital, and you're able to join from elsewhere. You might have teammates who are in different countries. If you think about Silicon Valley or just any tech company, you're not likely to be working with the same people all the time. And in fact, if you are, I would say you need to find a way to expand your team. And, it's not necessarily that you have to have a specific type of person, but it's the diversity of thought. You definitely want to have different mindsets. You want to have different experiences, and then find a way to coordinate all that together. That's the same from before the pandemic and now with digitalization. So, like I said, a lot of it is building up the experience I had before and applying it to the pandemic. But even then, the creativity and flexibility, if you don't have that experience, you can also apply your creativity and flexibility. Now, a good thing for a lot of you in high school and college, you're actually a lot more creative and flexible than you realize. You've been dealing with a completely different world. You're not graduating, you didn't graduate before the pandemic like I did. You're in school, so you're dealing with a new way of going to school, a new way of applying to jobs and stuff. You're very creative and flexible simply by being able to keep going and then say, I want to join an online event. Because if I told you a year ago, 2 years ago, hey, here's this big online event, you want to join? You might be thinking, why not just go there in person? Or I don't know, it's in a different state. Where now you're saying, hey, I want to go to this event because I can. So for you to be able to do that, you're already creative and flexible. Now, obviously, if you're saying you want to learn how to make a hackathon specifically, you can come out and reach out to me. I'll help you with that. But if you're saying, Scotty, I don't care about hackathons. I want to build something on iOS, or I want to do something else. Or maybe, Scotty, I want to meet with people. I want to do stuff that's people oriented, but how do I meet with them when there's a pandemic? You have tools like, we're using Hop In right now. I like to use Zoom. I use Clubhouse. Whenever I can, I use Instagram or Facebook DMs to get people to say, hey, let's get on a call and hear each other's voice, or maybe Zoom so we can see each other. So although I can't physically meet with someone, I'm finding ways to at least connect with them, because in the end, it's not about physically meeting someone. It's about creating that human connection between you and that person. That concept is still around. Before the pandemic, it was about making that human connection. During this pandemic, digitalization, it's also about making that connection, that human connection. So you definitely want to, you really want to be able to dig around and figure out, what experiences do I have? How can I be creative and flexible with that? Because if you can do that, then you can take a lot of stuff that you might feel like was left behind before the pandemic and bring it into the digitalization. So for me to say, here's a large hackathon with 30,000 people versus I'm going to train high school students on how to create their own hackathons to impact their own communities, you know, to get involved with the Obama Youth Job Corps. A lot of that is also that human connection of saying, hey, this is what I can do for you. This is how I'm going to empower you and uplift you. So it doesn't matter if you're underprivileged or wealthy, you're still going to be able to achieve your aims. You're going to create the impact you want. And why should this matter to you? It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be a hackathon, but this is a great way to show colleges when you apply, hey, this is why you should accept it and give me scholarship. This is a great way to say, hey, top tech companies, this is why you should hire me. Because when people were struggling with the pandemic, I was going out and creating impact for others. I was helping people. I was creating positive change in a really dark time. And I think a lot of times these are things that come from inside yourself. You already know these things. You don't have the same experiences, but you already know your values. You already know what kind of person are you. Are you honest? Are you loyal? You know, if you're honest, if you're loyal, if you're willing to work hard, if you're willing to try to be creative and flexible, if you're willing to study, if you're willing to spend that 10,000 hours, spend that time, you will find ways to overcome whatever disadvantage you had. Whether you're grown up poor, come from small towns, first generation, even if you have all the resources in the world, if you don't know how to use that stuff, it won't matter at all. So anyone who has experiences from before the pandemic, if you're still trying to figure out how do I include that during this digitalization right now, there's definitely ways to do it. You know, I'd be glad to connect with anyone if you want to hear about that. But obviously, you know, a lot of times you got to find ways to apply your own experiences to your own life. That's stuff that only you can do. I can help you with that. There's a lot of people who can help you with that, but in the end, you're the one who has to do that for yourself. Now, of course, like I said, a lot of you are joining this hackathon. You're doing it virtually, so you clearly have that desire. A lot of you are in school. You're dealing with, how do I attend school virtually? At the least, you know, most of you are dealing with very, very different things that no one has ever dealt with. Even the Black Plague was not global. So for a lot of people, how do you deal with this stuff? You're honestly, it's a blessing in disguise. You're probably the first generation who has to deal with this stuff on a global scale. And it will give you a lot of advantages. It doesn't seem like it right now because you know, it's easy to say, oh, what about people who already have jobs? There's a lot of people who lost their jobs too. The people who have jobs, who still have jobs, had to adapt and overcome. You know, if anyone watches Bear Grylls, Man vs. Wild, you know, constantly in the wild, you always have to improvise, adapt, overcome. You have to find ways to work with what you have. You have to maximize what you have. And that's a lot of what you're doing right now. This school year, it's been crazy. Last school year was even crazier, I'm sure of it, because at least this year, you knew going into this school year what's going to happen. So you prepare. But whatever has happened to you as students, you're able to take these experiences from before the pandemic. You're able to take the creativity and flexibility you've learned through this past year and 6 days now. And you're doing this during a really difficult time, because being students means you're not just working for whatever jobs you have, but also working on things to put on your resume to get into college or to get hired at a job that will pay you. You're also working on academics. You're growing yourself. You know, some of you might be lucky and still have athletics. A lot of you are still doing 1,000 things to hopefully get somewhere in your future. As hard as that is, it is, you know, that's the system we're in. And until that changes, That's a system that you do have to succeed in. So take the experiences you had from before the pandemic, take the creativity and flexibility you've gained in the past year, find ways to combine it. Reach out to people who have done it, people who can help you. Most importantly, reach out to people who don't just teach you how to do it. They're also actively and presently doing those things. You want to find those people and say, hey, I want to learn from you. Sometimes they'll be able to mentor you directly. Sometimes they'll say, hey, I'm going to have someone else mentor you because that person's a better fit. So whatever it is you need to do, find ways to combine all the skills you have, the experiences you have, the mindset. You're going to get through this. It's not easy, but then again, if you want it easy, would you really be at a hackathon online? No, you'd probably be just, watching YouTube, playing video games, hanging out. And I don't mean playing video games to try to join an esports league. I'm talking about just playing casually, because let's be real. Those of you who are trying to join a league, some of these high school students I've mentored, I know how much practice you put in. So, I'm not trying to belittle that. I'm simply saying if you're just playing casually, there's a difference between that and training. And those of you who are a part of this hackathon, I would say, you're probably more in training mode. And I definitely want to commend that. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. We still have 20 some minutes.
Yeah, man, I am very glad we crossed paths and you came here, man. You definitely presented perspective I think is important, so. My vision, my vision for this conference and the hackathon is a lot like yours. I mean, it wasn't just about sort of, creating a fun place for people to come and kind of write code and win prizes. It was about trying to create mentorship across experience levels and help, and also help young people discover things they might be interested in that they've never even tried before. Through the boot camps and the talks and the competition, and it's not just the coding competition. We also have, all kinds of little stuff like, create your first NFT. They also have a crypto trading competition over there where, whoever is at the top of the leaderboard, the first few spots get prizes, and just trying to stretch the brain in all kinds of ways and surround them with people of different experience levels and also give everybody an opportunity to mentor sort of to other people with, less experience. And, so no, I definitely understand your vision for wanting to sort of use hackathons as a tool for, knowledge sharing and for helping people discover their own interests,
Yeah. And I think the stuff you're talking about, stretching their brain, I didn't mention it specifically, but the creativity and flexibility that I'm saying, hey, students, you have that going on right now. You're probably you're not quite the mental prime of your life, but you are in possibly the most mentally flexible time of your life, because you have so many things going on and the adult world is making you deal with so many of our problems because we're telling you wear masks, don't wear masks, go to school or don't go to school. You're constantly having to readjust every single day to something that we as adults are forcing onto you. At least our generations above you, we're forcing onto your generations. So you're in a very creative and flexible state of mind. And, you're saying, hey, create your first NFT.
Yep.
Most of us probably just first found out about an NFT 10 days ago with Top Shot. and
it's been a crazy time over this NFT thing,
Yeah, if I can say 10 days ago, we all first heard about NFTs with Top Shot. Well, think of it this way. Anyone who just created an NFT, you're almost as ahead of the curve as anyone, because when iOS switched from Objective-C to Swift, I started learning Swift from day one. And that was sometime in September 2014. So I have had 6.5 years of experience of iOS. I might not be the best, but I've been with it as long as anyone could have been, except for the people who invented Swift. So for those of you who created an NFT just now, be proud of that.
Absolutely.
Because if you're saying, oh, what skills do I have? You just gained a skill that almost no one in the world has, almost no generation has, or will ever understand. You look at how old we are, we think we're young, but I remember being 14, 15, 16, thinking, man, 18's old. I get to 18, it's like, man, 20's old. I get to 20, it's like, man, 25's old. And I regret to say that I'm at the ripe young age of 21 right now. And you look like a solid 22, 23. You look like
the 25th anniversary of my 21st birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
no,
think that's the thing.
yeah,
NFTs, they created one, they have that skill.
yeah. No, a few other things you said, and I'd like to just reemphasize that, because I'm sure there's it's several things. One thing is just for every student, every person, whether it's student or professional engineer that's attending this conference. I mean, it says something about you that you would actually take the time out of the week to focus on something like this instead of something else that might be entertaining but doesn't actually help you expand yourself. And another thing is that, he said, regardless of what, sort of economic background, you come from or whatever, because again, I come from a poor family. My mom was a German immigrant. My dad grew up in the ghetto, and neither one of them had any college education, and just all kinds of problems early in life. But, it is about that 10,000 hour, or however you want to quantify it, to say that the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I mean, if you I used to tell myself, how can I possibly leapfrog everybody and get ahead of everybody, where I have more income, where I really enjoy my life and I have more freedom and I'm not working paycheck to paycheck. And the only solution I could come through to is just outstudy them, outwork them, outthink them. It's not just outworking and outstudying, outthink them. Take time out of the day where you don't study and you don't work and you're just reflecting on things and planning and thinking and brainstorming and, talking to people about your plans, and just outthink them. I mean, that's like a joke about Bill Gates when he was a kid. People used to look at him. He'd be off in a corner by himself, just like in outer space. And they're like, "What are you doing?" And he said, look at him and say, "I'm thinking," And so just make sure you take plenty of time to think. So outwork people, outstudy people, outthink people, and just know that if you actually just do that, just you'll wind up getting wherever you want to be, regardless of where you come from.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, something that most people don't know about me, the reason why I want to go to Duke was specifically because of the basketball coach, Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K. At the time, he was already the head coach for Team USA. USA basketball, we had depending on how you count it, a 6 to 8 year slide where we weren't winning the Olympics. We weren't winning the what is now known as the FIBA World Cup. And he came in, and even his first time going around, we lost to Greece. And one of the big things that really caught my attention was he was constantly adapting, the college game, learning from NBA players what they do, and then saying, now we're going to go play the international basketball game. All three styles of basketball are very different. And he found ways to get all these NBA stars to work together. LeBron James was not LeBron James today. At the time, he was still kind of a kid. He was looking at for my generation, kind of like Kobe Bryant's the guy. Kobe Bryant was a guy saying, "Hey, I'm calling the shots." But even then, they weren't just calling the shots. They were studying film. They're studying every team, every player. They're putting in their time, not with books, but with film. But it's the same thing. It's not about the material. It's about putting in that time to understand exactly what your opponent's going to do. So when they start inching closer, they're 4 points down with 7 minutes left. How to keep them at bay, and then you pull out that victory. And I think that's the thing. A lot of people, we talked today about representation. That is very important, but don't discount what you can learn from other people. Now, it's important to have representation, but there are some people like Coach K. I clearly look nothing like him, but I recognized that's what he's doing. I want to learn from the best. And one of my favorite things he ever said, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice locks in your habits. So perfect practice makes perfect. And, obviously, you still got to put in the 10,000 hours. You can't just make one perfect shot and then expect to be a good shooter in basketball. You can't just build one good project and expect to get hired at Google forever. You got to keep practicing. But if you do what you can to the best of your abilities, you're gonna improve much faster. And of course, like I said, Elias earlier, he's not trying to have a hero day every day. He's trying to just make sure he never has a 0 day. So yeah, some days he might just be worn out. Like that first week after FHS hacks, he was just completely wiped out. Dooney was the same. I told them, look, just take some time off. You don't have to necessarily go and do something amazing, but at the least, if you're going to chill and take a break, do that because you decided you should do that, as opposed to you wake up, you don't know what to do, you got to get stuff done, but you don't feel motivated, so you just waste the day. Take that break because you're actively resting. You know, if you're going to get stuff done, if it's just send a quick email, does it have to be a perfect email? If it doesn't, just send something quick so the person hears back. But when it's time to jump into the game, you want to make sure that 90% of your experience has been in practice, and then the last 10% is, you know, just being creative and flexible. And I think that's one of the key things. Perfect practice makes perfect. And that lets you, when you need to just do something quick, just get it done. Because then when you're in game time, you're able to really operate at the level you need to operate. And, you know, Leroy, for you going to Stanford, I'm sure you experienced the same thing I did at Duke. You step on campus, you're just like, oh, yeah. Okay, I'm seeing kids who, you know, what they're wearing already costs more than everything you ever owned in your life. You know,
crazy.
You know, you're probably hearing about careers you never heard of.
Yeah. Now you said something about the, you know, you don't, it always doesn't have to be a hero day, you know, as long as you don't have a 0 day. And that kind of reminds me, like when I really started getting serious about education, when I was about 17, 18 years old, I kind of got into this process of forming these habits, which again, you already know, like over time, you know, success is a matter of habit formation and habit deletion. You know, you have to delete. There's lots of habits that'll form in your behavior that you didn't even really ever intend to be there. They just kind of accidentally get there from the way you're raised or whatever, you know, or the kind of people you surround yourself when you're younger. And so you obviously have to kind of become more self-conscious and sort of examine yourself more and delete some of those things and put in place new habits. And so probably I remember my very first habit I ever put in place for myself was that I decided I would never go to sleep on a single night without being able to identify some new thing that I learned that day. I mean, and it doesn't matter what it was. I just wanted to be able to learn some new thing. I mean, if it was some historical event that happened on a certain day, I could recite, you know, that thing, or it might be whatever. But every night before I went to bed, I would ask myself, you know, did I learn something today? And if so, what is it? And if it wasn't, then I might pull out a book for another 10 or 15 minutes and kind of get something in my head or something. But I made sure every day I learned something. And, you know, you'd be amazed if you do that 365 days out of a year for even a couple years, how much new knowledge you'll have in your head just in a couple years. So don't go to bed without learning something every day. And I think, you know, and otherwise, you know, be aware of your habits and just know that you didn't really consciously put all of them there. And there may be some habits that accidentally sort of developed in you that need to be removed. And then obviously you need to work hard to establish new habits in yourself, you know, that'll lead to success. But that's some really good points, man.
Yeah, I actually also want to throw in another thing is, unfortunately, we are in a system still that it kind of feels like I'm 18. I didn't get into Duke or Stanford. Is Scotty better than me? Is Leroy better than me? No, not necessarily. Some people, you know, we talk about late bloomers. That is true.
Yep.
It took me 2 years at Duke to figure out finally how to study. I started with a 2.3 GPA. I was able to pull that up to a 3.3. That's going from a C+ average to a B+ average. That only happened because the last 2 years I was consistently getting straight A's at Duke. So although I got into Duke with scholarship, I was probably more getting in because of my potential. Duke probably saw he's going to work hard. He's going to catch up in some way. He's not there yet, but he's going to make it. And I proved Duke right by graduating with a B+ average. And, you know, it's just one of those things. If you're thinking, yeah, but Scott, you still got into Duke. All right, that's fine. Some people, they go to community college to save money. Maybe they got to work a job to keep the lights on for their younger brothers and sisters. Nothing wrong with that. You do what you need to do.
Yep.
And if you need to, from there, transfer into a 4-year school. Maybe you just go to the local or community college and then the local state school. And that's okay, because some of the smartest, most successful, driven people,
absolutely,
they realize I don't have to graduate from high school at 18 with a scholarship to the top school. Maybe I will join the military and then use my GI Bill. Maybe I'll go to whatever school I can, and then at 22, I'll start my 4th business, because the first 3 failed in undergrad. But my 4th one, it starts taking me to a few places. I get connected, I start meeting people. And then at 27, I'm getting letters of recommendation from the right people to go to the top business schools or the top med schools, law schools. Maybe you don't do school. Whatever it is, you got to keep going. You keep going forward, and you can make it to where you want to go. It's not easy, but you don't have to make it when you're 18. And, I had no problem telling everyone I got into Duke. And even after graduating, yeah, I struggled a lot in life because I had no idea what I was doing. Any of us who graduated with a recession is like, great, there's no jobs for us. We're not even getting interviews. The company they emailed me yesterday and the next day they folded. That's just what happens sometimes. But if you keep going, like the year said before he went to bed, what did I learn? We didn't exactly have Wikipedia and Google, not Google as it is today, YouTube. So any of you, if you're saying, I just want to do something like that, easy. Hop on YouTube or Wikipedia. Wikipedia will have an article of the day. They'll have what happened in history on this day. Take a glance through. Just start off. Doesn't have to be a hero day, right? Just start off. Just 2 minutes, glance through that. Maybe watch a 3-minute YouTube video that gives you the simplest version of what happened during this day in history. Eventually, you'll start finding other channels or articles saying, I want to read in depth about this. You might start picking up textbooks. You start visiting professors. Next thing you know, you might be saying, I want to major in that, or I want to work in that industry. You just got to get it started just one step at a time.
Yep. And I and a couple other things I'll add here. We got a few more minutes left. Is also understand that, we're talking about Duke and Stanford, and, and every one of us has different paths through education. Some of us will wind up going through those types of schools. Some of us won't. I found in my, life that I've met a lot of people that did not go to those schools that were, a lot more educated and a lot more capable in the workforce and in all other aspects of life than some people that did go to those schools. So it's not a matter of the school. I mean, regardless of what school you go to, I mean, these schools definitely hold you to a really high standard when you're going there. I mean, they'll work you to death to make sure that if you're gonna get that degree from Harvard or Stanford or Duke, you are, I guarantee you earned it. So if you go to any school, just hold yourself to a high standard. And as long as you study extremely hard and read the books and do the work and do all sorts of stuff outside of the basic curricula they give you there, and just hold yourself to a really high standard, it really doesn't matter what school you go to, you're going to wind up with a solid education. And also understand that if you wind up going the route where you do a little bit of community college work and then you go through a local university and you graduate with a bachelor, and as long as you work really hard and maintain good grades, my dream in life was to go to Stanford ever since I was a little kid. And I did not do all of the right things when I was a teenager to make it into Stanford to do my undergrad. But I made it a point when we were in California, and my daughter, we were right down the road from Stanford, and my son was running track on the Stanford track there every day. And it's this beautiful campus. We're going to the bookstore all the time. And I was like, why don't we just have my daughter born here? And so my daughter was born at Lucille Packard Stanford Hospital there. And then while she was born, I made a decision right then to apply to their graduate program and just see if they'd accept me. And they did. And so I didn't actually finish the entire program there. But I actually got a really good taste of Stanford and did some graduate work there. And so just understand that if you have some dream school, whether it's Duke or Harvard or Stanford, and you don't make it into their undergraduate program, it doesn't matter, because if you really want to be there, just do good in your undergrad and apply for the graduate program, and you can still be there and you can accomplish whatever you want to accomplish, including go to your dream school. It's just, got to put in those hours,
Definitely. And I think something I learned much later, I'm sure Leroy agrees, I'm sure a lot of us would agree, your education is part of your experience. Because if you look at Richard Branson in the UK, I think he dropped out of school in 4th grade or something. What's more important, what's more impressive, getting a Harvard, Stanford, Duke degree, or being invited to speak at those schools?
Or getting an honorary degree from there or something.
Yeah. Coach K, he went to West Point. He gave, he became the coach at Duke. Yeah. And, he gave the graduation speech in 2016. Ed Helms, who played Andy in The Office, never attended Cornell. His character did, but he didn't. But he was invited to speak at Cornell. And of course, this isn't about giving speeches at the top schools either. The main point is your education is part of your experience. Your work experience is part of your experience. Hanging out with your friends, building stuff together, goofing off, going on YouTube, Wikipedia, playing games casually, training for an esports league. They're all part of your collective experience. And if you really care about getting into these top schools, there's always going to be an opportunity.
Absolutely.
But if you don't care about getting in, well, you might be invited to go speak at one, and then that's where you have to decide, well, do I go there or do I go to this other one? Because once you get people saying, hey, we want you to speak at our graduation, that means your experience has reached a point where they don't care if you went to a good enough school or not. They're just saying, most people will use your degrees, your credentials to determine have you reached a certain level. But once you get to a certain point, they don't care about that anymore. They just want to say, hey, can you help out? We want to help out. Here's an honorary degree. So, you know, like Leroy said, moved to California and said, you know what, I'll give it a shot. If you don't take that shot, you're not going to make that shot.
Yeah. You miss all, what does it say? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, you know? So
yeah. Depending on who you are, it came from Michael Scott or Wayne Gretzky.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. I will connect with you outside of here, and that's some inspiring stuff, man. I really do appreciate it.
Definitely appreciate you bringing me on. Actually, I'm looking forward to connecting a couple people with you as well. So,
all right. Well, I will connect with you after this, and I'll hop off here. And I do appreciate you, man. So, and
thank you. You too. Yeah, I appreciate everything you're doing. Everyone who's at this event, anyone who's watching this in the future, best of luck to you. Definitely don't hesitate to reach out to people. If we can help in some way, definitely let us know. We'll sit down with you, take time to try to figure out how we can help you, or if we know someone who can help you better than we can. So, best of luck. Like I said, don't worry about having a hero day. Just make sure you never have a 0 day, one step at a time. Perfect practice makes perfect.
All right. Thank you.
See you.
All right. Take a quick break and be back in a minute.